Welcome back to Let It Rip. With us now is the original king of all media. You can read his columns in the Metro Times, hear his voice on public radio, and if you're smart enough, you can take one of his classes at Wayne State. Jack is back. Professor Lessenberry to the rest of us. Next to him, the man to call if you find yourself in trouble with the public. Matt Friedman helps clients big and small through crisis management. If you're caught in a scandal, he'll get you out of it. He's here tonight. But why is it that some of the richest, most powerful people believe they have to lie in the first place? Dr. Gerald Shiner is here to help us answer that question. Of course, Charlie never lies, so let's talk about Brian Williams right now. Now, this is the story that got him in trouble.
2 of our 4 helicopters were hit by ground fire, including the one I was in.
No kidding.
RPG and AK-47.
What altitude were you hit at?
We were only at 100 feet doing 100 forward knots because we had these massive pieces of bridge beneath us on slings.
What happens the minute everybody realizes you've been hit?
We figure out how to land safely, and we did.
Now, Brian Williams didn't just tell that lie once. He did it several times over 10 years. Jack, the big lie. He's now been suspended without pay. Is that enough?
Well, I don't think we know what's happened to him. We know NBC bought themselves some time. I wouldn't bet a whole lot of money he'll be back in 6 months, but you never know.
Well, when you look at what he did compared to other reporters, there's Janet Cook, who invented an 8-year-old heroin addict who did not exist. There's Jason Blair. Some people have called me to talk about Mitch Albom, a respected, well-known columnist, someone I admire, a philanthropist, but a man who 10 years ago wrote about some people going to a basketball game, an NCAA tournament game, and they didn't show up. He too was suspended for several days, and yet he is honored and revered as one of America's best-known authors today.
Well, to some extent, at some point, this is all about marketing. Now, it's not correct to say that Brian Williams was merely a journalist. In fact, he was something else. And he was on delivering the news, he was on Letterman, he was on comedy shows. To me, that's not even a blurred line. The line is completely gone. And so he was playing Brian Williams all the time. And I think at some point, he's told the story so many times, he probably believed it.
Well, Matt, that's the question here. We are not talking about just anybody off the street. We're talking about the #1 anchor man in America, a guy who makes $10 million a year. Has NBC handled this the right way?
No, they haven't. In fact, the only person who's gone on NBC and talked about this directly is Brian Williams. And that was a week ago tonight, and the public was not believing what he was saying. Since then, NBC has been quiet except for statements. And what we always say in our firm is push people, not paper. People relate to people. And if NBC wants to recover their brand and recover some trust in an environment where they're not doing real well, nightly news was the only #1 product that they had going into last week, somebody needs to say something about how they plan to restore the public trust. We haven't heard anything.
Well, Dr. Shiner, why does a man like Brian Williams feel the need to lie in the first place?
Vanity, ego, the need to fill in for something you feel is missing, the need to make yourself feel and sound more interesting than you are, maybe responding to the pressure night after night to be interesting, fascinating, and to portray yourself as brave. Now, what I heard Brian Williams say is not, I lied, it's, I didn't remember right. And I think that what happens is you convince yourself and you create your own reality, and part of you believes it. Deep down inside, you know you're lying.
Well, people need a confession. Look, Bill Clinton eventually confessed he survived. Richard Nixon didn't, and he did not. And I think that he needed to come and fess up, may do his mea culpa, and then we start the forgiving process. But
because the most celebrated are the rehabilitated, and if you come clean and take a mea culpa, take your medicine, maybe you can be redeemed and come back into the fold.
Well,
if you say you've never done anything wrong, that hubris gets in the way.
Well, now, what's worse? Now, Charlie, you're an attorney. I know you have seen clients lie on the witness stand. So what's worse, lying in court or lying to the public?
I don't know if it's a lie. It's misremembering. That's the new word.
Is that real?
Misremembering.
Is that real?
No, it's not. It's lying. It's lying. Brian Williams, he must have known what he was doing. If you were in a helicopter and you were hit, you'd remember that. Absolutely. And if you weren't, you'd remember that. And so there's a real problem here, though.
But there's a big irony, too.
But Charlie, the true trauma victim doesn't want to talk about what happened to him. And if you're in that harrowing experience, it reminds you of being afraid, and it makes you uncomfortable. You're not going to bring it up. When you bring it up, it's boasting, it's vanity, it's ego.
Look, that's what women tell me. They say that men lie in a specific way. And we tend to embellish the truth.
You mean
all right?
they know it? They know we're like that?
We always say that the fish we caught is bigger, the girl we dated is prettier, that somehow our courage under fire was more heroic.
The irony is Brian Williams was not in a living room. His helicopter could have been hit. He was in a dangerous situation. He just exaggerated a little bit where he was. That's the sad irony of all this, that, you know, he did put himself in harm's way, not just as much as he thought.
But here's the law. What we say is if you tell a lie or you misremember, your credibility is shot. And that's the problem.
And
it's not so much the lie itself. Once you lie, in fact, there's a jury instruction. If you lie on one aspect, the jury doesn't have to believe you in anything that you say.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Remember Bill Clinton? Who can forget this lie?
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people. Thank you.
Not just one lie, 2, 3, 4 lies, and yet he is today beloved.
Big difference in politics, though. Because in politics, he followed the typical playbook, which is attack the accuser. And that turned into a long, drawn-out process that included impeachment on party lines. Much different in the court of public opinion in a business situation. And I think it's a lot more clear-cut in this case. People want to trust the people they get their news from. It's inherent.
Plus, there are people who said
they want to trust the companies they get their news from.
Because honesty is important there. Right. But Bill Clinton was beloved.
And there are people who said he lied about sex. Everybody lies about sex. So that's so there's some people that cut him a pass on that.
You admit it, okay? But now, does Twitter and Facebook, does social media make it worse?
Oh, no question. One of the questions I got this week is, why did it take so long? Well, one of the reasons why it took so long is in 2003, when this story began, it was not as easy for a member of the military to say, hey, wait a second, there's something wrong here. But in 2015, that took a matter of a couple of days. And the other factor is, these are men of the military who are criticizing Brian Williams and calling attention to it. In our country right now, nobody has more respect, deservedly so, than veterans. So it's a news guy telling stories versus a veteran. That's an easy contest for the public.
It's a news guy boasting, and veterans don't boast. Typically, they don't boast. They're more reserved, and they're more reluctant to talk about those things. They don't want that kind of pride, or they don't want that kind of attention if they've gone through something like that.
But what can he do to get himself back together? I mean, should he just come on and say, you know what, I lied, I should be suspended, whatever? Can he really speak the news?
He should have done that last week.
That news job.
Yeah, last week was the time to do that. And the problem now is we don't know. And NBC, one of the reasons why they bought themselves 6 months is other shoes could drop. Tonight there was already a report about a Navy SEAL group saying he wasn't with us on our boat. So they're trying to give themselves time to assess how big the damage is. His time to get in front of this with the help of his bosses was last Wednesday night. They didn't do it.
On the other hand, it could be that their ratings tank, and they may think in 6 months, if the only thing they can do to get their ratings back up is bring back Brian Williams, it could happen. I don't think it'll happen, but that could happen.
The bottom line is always money. Always money. Jon Stewart just happened to quit on the same day. He decided after, 16 years, making $25 million a year, Jon Stewart decides to leave. Do you think Jon Stewart could replace Brian Williams?
Well, when that news came, the Stewart news came out, coincidentally, about 15, 20 minutes before the Williams news. Comedy Central probably thought it's going to take NBC a long time to figure that out. Let's put out our release. Little did they know, NBC was working on a release, too.
Incredible. Amazing coincidence. Well, much more to come. Gentlemen, stay right where you are because we're going to take this show on the road. Have you ever lied on the job? Or what some of you tell Charlie? Coming up next.